Good morning, everybody. We're just going to get started here in about 30 seconds. It looks like the majority of everybody is joining. Thank you for being here. We'll get started momentarily. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for a conversation on effective communication during and post-COVID. Just as a reminder, please ask your questions using the Q&A feature on your layout on the video screen. If you hover over any of our heads, the Q&A portion will come up at the bottom. This is an active session, so please ask any questions that you'd like, and I'll answer them. We'll have our panelists answer them in real time. Before I introduce our guest speakers, I'd like to thank our webinar sponsors, SCE Federal Credit Union and UNLV Executive MBA Program. We appreciate their support in helping us at the Vegas Chamber bring timely and important information to you. I'd also like to highlight a few Chamber programs as well. So next week, we're going to have our annual Washington, D.C. fly-in. This is in partnership between us as well as LVGEA, and we're going to be bringing D.C. to LV. It takes place all next week, September 14th through 17th, with a series of meetings with decision makers and policy makers on Capitol Hill. Now more than ever, we need business leaders to engage on federal issues, especially those important to rebuilding our economy and community. Earlier this month, you may have seen that we announced the new U.S. Bank Coaching and Growth Center at the Vegas Chamber. This new member benefit gives you and your employees access to free goals coaching with professional life coaches. It's a great way for you to set and achieve personal and professional goals. And if you want more information, go to vegaschamber.com. The goals coach process is something that's new for all of us, and it is available to all employees at your organization. Also on Friday, September 18th from 11 to 12, we'll be hosting the grand opening for the very first of its kind, the Employee Envy Business Hub at the Vegas Chamber. We're extremely excited to announce this partnership and do the grand opening because it's a partnership between us, Workforce Connections, Nevada's Department of Employee Training and Rehabilitation, Nevada's Department of Business and Industry. And it'll give businesses access to a range of employment services such as training, recruitment, and even tax credits to help you with your talent needs. And finally, on Thursday, September 24th from 10 to 11 a.m., we'll be hosting a webinar with Mike Peregrina, who's a CFO and co-founder of Homey.com, a tech-based real estate brokerage company, and Jeff Sailing, Executive Director of Startup NV, a nonprofit incubator and accelerator for Nevada-based startup companies. That will be a really, really good topic as they talk about how companies innovate through hardships and some best practices in that field, including how to raise capital. So I'm sure ears perked up on that one. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today's discussion. First, we have Greg Ferraro, president and founder at the Ferraro Group, a public relations and public affairs company with offices here in Las Vegas, Phoenix, Reno, Washington, D.C., and Carson City. He has 3 decades of experience working in public affairs and public relations arena on behalf of clients, including the Nevada Resort Association, your Las Vegas Raiders, which I'm excited for them to play on Sunday. It doesn't feel real. Apple, Cox Communications, JP Morgan, Cisco Systems, and MB Energy. And we also have Deborah Campbell, lead strategist at Deborah Campbell and Associates. Deborah was an award-winning television news journalist and public affairs producer and host for more than 16 years, and is known and respected for her unique ability to inspire and engage diverse stakeholders to listen, learn, and act. Both of them are chamber members as well, and you can find their information on our directory if you reach out to them. Thank you both for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing all of your thoughts. Before we get started with our questions, I want to invite both Greg and Deborah to make some introductory remarks.
Yep. Go ahead, Deb.
I'm first. Okay. Well, again, I'm Deborah Campbell and Deborah Campbell and Associates, a Henderson-based firm. I've been in business since 2004 as a business owner, and prior to that, a nonprofit executive here in Southern Nevada, United Way, and also St. Rose Dominican Hospitals. And then prior to that, the television career at 2 local stations here. I want to start out with something kind of personal, though. It's been 6 months now, since we've been under the the COVID restrictions as far as our being able to get out and about, and also deal directly, you know, face to face with our clients. And so with that, what I've been doing in addition to working is doing what I call COVID cleaning. I'm talking the entire garage, the entire house, looking for nonprofits that'll take my stuff and all that. But what I found the other day, and I know I'm gonna date myself, is my graduation packet from Leadership Las Vegas, class of 95, that's 1995, and with a picture in black and white. And I just wanted to show that to you guys, that it brings back some really great memories. And you talk about full circle, you know, years later, almost 26 years later. At that time, I was expecting my daughter, and I only missed one class. So it's just good to be here and being able to now just talk with you a little bit about COVID and effective communication. So thanks for having me. What I'll focus on too, just briefly though, is right now as an organizational development strategist, you know, I always look at what I call the 4 E's: the economy, education, the environment, and equity. So I'll be talking about those types of things throughout the morning. And thank you, Will, for having me.
Of course. And do I dare say that 95 was the best class?
Oh, I think you should. And then I'm sure that the comments are going to start blowing up in there. But I would say we were a resilient class with many, many people that stayed here and are in leadership positions here in the state of Nevada.
Man, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. Greg?
That was great, Deb. I liked it. Greg Ferraro, as Will introduced me. First, let me say thank you to Will for moderating today and helping us bring to light some of the issues associated with effective communications in COVID and post-COVID. Just by way of background, I am a 5th generation Nevadan. I moved to Southern Nevada with my dad in 1969 when Nevada had a population of about 200,000 people. So I've been around the block, so to speak, a few times in Nevada and watched our state grow and prosper and endure several challenges. Maybe this is one of the greatest. But resilience was spoken about, Deb mentioned it, and I know Nevadans come together and always work through whatever challenges we're confronted with. We have a rich history of doing that successfully. And I know that that's the spirit that will carry us forward through this pandemic and beyond. I wanted to just make sure, Will, that everybody, as we get into the discussion today, is up to date on where we stand with the state's directives related to COVID-19. And if you'll allow me a moment, I'll just quickly summarize what those are so it sets a predicate for our discussion today. We're seeing a downward trend in our state as of yesterday on hospitalizations. Our 7-day average for test positivity is declining. We're not out of the woods by any means, but we're doing the right things and it's starting to show. Currently in Clark County, the business directives are for, we know, most everybody knows, bars, wineries, taverns that don't serve food are required to be closed. Gyms are required to conduct classes and space their equipment to allow for 6 feet of distance. Face coverings are required for all patrons except those engaging in high intensity workouts. Restaurants are to ensure that there are 6 feet of distance between groups of diners. Employees must wear face coverings. Guests must wear face coverings if not actively eating or drinking. Those that are yet to be seated must wait outside, and no table groups larger than 6. For retail general office, all public-facing employees and patrons must wear face coverings. Telework and distance work is encouraged. Employees to be required to stay home if they're in any way symptomatic. 50% occupancy maximums in those professional spaces, and an assurance that 6 feet of social distance between persons that don't reside in the same household. So that is what we're dealing with today. I wanted to remind people that if you went to Nevada, NV, healthresponse.nv.gov, That's where you can keep up to date on any changes that might be made in directives affecting business in Clark County. Hopefully we'll stay on these trend lines and we'll start to see some easing. I'm not making any predictions, but I'm hopeful that we'll start to see some relief in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that, and a great summary in terms of where we are. Before we get started, I just want to say that there is another leadership person, but they're in progress right now. It's the never-ending class of 2020. I think that might be their theme. What a year to be in leadership. So thank you for joining us. Thank you both for your comments. Let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, what have you seen out there? How has the consumer behavior changed since the shutdown?
Well, I'll start. You know, as a former reporter and then a strategist, you know, I'm keeping my eyes open everywhere I go. I'm starting to, you know, go out more. And when I say go out more, you know, more than the gas station, more than the, you know, the once every few weeks Costco, but just driving around and checking things out. And because I was thinking about this particular conversation we'd have today, as far as how consumer behavior, you know, has changed. And then also doing a lot of reading online. And that's one of the things that I'm seeing. And particularly when we're talking about business owners or people that are in leadership positions, how have things changed? And what I'm seeing is that people are more intentional as far as where they're shopping, why they're shopping at certain places. People are more intentional as far as what they're spending and what they're not spending. I think people are also, you know, whether you are have been laid off, whether your hours are shrinking, whether your business is shrinking, but just more intentional thinking about at the end of the day, how am I spending my dollars, and how am I feeling when I'm doing that? So I'm seeing that that's what I'm seeing, you know, not with particularly what you see on the news, you know, but more how, and I like to focus on how are people feeling and why are they doing what they're doing. So as I drive around, and I'll use myself as an example, I'm seeing, and it's kind of disheartening, but you know, more and more signs coming down. You know, some of your businesses, you know, you know, either you pull up and you see that it's actually closed, or the signs are coming down. You're looking around and you're seeing that there's fewer choices, and with that, I think it creates a lot of confusion. You're not feeling comfortable, you know, as a consumer. You're not feeling comfortable as a business owner. But at the same time, you have to be thinking about what are people, you know, where are they getting their information? And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because even personally, I don't know where to go. Sometimes I had mentioned before, I'm doing COVID cleaning. Who can come and pick up my things? Where can I donate? You know, who's allowed to come to my home, you know, to be able to assist as far as movers? Can I even hire a cleaning service? You know, just basic things like that. And what I'm seeing is that consumers are looking for information, and many of us are getting either frustrated or giving up or calling their friends and asking for referrals. So that's kind of a general, you know, how is consumer behavior changing? But I think we're being, you know, more intentional on what we do, but also we have a lot more questions, and whoever's going to answer those questions first, what I'm seeing is the ones that are going to get or continue to have your business.
I agree with that. I think, you know, during this last 6 months, I mean, people now are paying much greater attention to interaction with others that they didn't particularly pay any attention to at all. And as far as consumers of information, consumers of foodstuffs, and consumers of daily needs, we're all changing the way in which we evaluate who it is we want to interact with and how we interact with them. You know, beginning in March, when on March 17th, the governor's order shut down gaming in the state of Nevada. And that was a stark reminder of the need for all of us to change the way in which we're going to communicate with one another, do business with one another, interact with one another. And we've all marched through those early months. We all hunkered down. We made safety and cleanliness a priority in our homes, in our places of business, and unfortunately not in our places of worship. But it's a case where people started to break down the most important needs for safety and protection of the people that you care about. And that's not going to change. We might see some modification of that behavior, but I think what it really means for businesses is when you're trying to continue to maintain your client or patron or customer engagement, you're going to have to be transparent, and transparency equals trust in this pandemic. And the more transparent you are, the more you communicate with your employees and with your customers, you're going to be rewarded in the end, and because you'll be remembered for having done the right things at the right time.
Yeah, that's a great point to both of you. I know for us in particular, going back to when the news started to break about the virus spreading, a lot of us internally started to think about some of these ways that we were going to be prepared should anything happen from a shutdown point of view. And I know a lot of businesses out there also had that same planning session. But for those that maybe are taking a look at their strategy now in terms of how they've been able to communicate what they've been doing, how do businesses right now ensure that their communication strategy is working? I think at the very beginning we all tried something, but now, as Deb pointed, we're 6 months into this. How can we know whether or not it's working?
Greg, you first.
Well, I think it starts with your employees. And are you making their safety a priority? And how you're conducting your business affairs starts with the people that you work with. And I think providing multiple forms of communication to employees then enables you to start to communicate effectively with your customers or your patrons or your clients, as the case may be. I think candor and openness and helping everybody feel connected and feel that their safety is your priority. And as you establish that with your employees and your vendors and suppliers, or whatever the case may be, then I think you carry that forward to your customers. And you've got to continue to make customers feel that you're doing everything you can to meet and exceed either CDC or state guidelines for safe business conduct.
That's a really good point. And Deborah, before you answer, I just want to add on to that. It's interesting you say that in terms of being able to communicate what you're doing from a safety perspective. Usually when you Google a business pre-COVID, it was always about either the service or the product. Now it's turning into, I walked in and saw this, or walked in and saw that. That seems to kind of be taking the new, or at least what the new reviews are saying. Deborah, would you like to add on?
It's interesting you bring that up as well, because where I was going to go on that, particularly with employees, is to empower them. We're talking about safety, but also the employees themselves, aside from working for you, they should be working with you, and then also they're, can bring in what their suggestions are. I think right now, empowering your employees to make decisions, to ask questions of your consumers that are coming in, like what's working for you, what could be better. And as you do that, you're engaging, right, your employees and having them feel more empowered and that they're part of the solution. So it's more not you're lucky to have a job, because that, sometimes permeates through certain businesses, and I've seen it. But more, we value you for being here. We value you for helping us be more engaging with our customers, having them feel welcome, and also value that, you can answer questions that people have and be proactive as well. Welcome people. And that's where I'm going back, to those types of places where they welcome me. They ask, let's say the UPS store where I do a lot of business. How are you doing? What could we be doing better? And then when I ask questions, the employee is able to answer that question. To me, I think that's when you get the, the enthusiasm of the employee, and also the enthusiasm because they're the outward facing folks to continue to get my business. And then as I see happy employees, I'm feeling like they're doing right by them and they're going to do right by me.
And I think you've got to help them see the positive in this. Is often hard time to find it, but is working to accentuate the positive in a steady daily drumbeat of bad news. And if you can work with your employees and help them feel connected and help them feel that they're a part of getting through this together. But if you stay positive and you communicate with them and you are direct and open, then I think that starts to grow and build, and it then lends itself to positive business relationships with your customers.
That's really great points. And what I heard on the overall theme was start with your employees and solicit feedback early and often. That's really good advice. Really quickly, I just wanted to make mention. This webinar will be available afterwards. We'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel at Vegas Chamber. Before I ask this question, we actually had a question come in from the audience, and I think it really dovetails really well into our next question. So this question's for both Greg and Deborah. This particular member is a brand new member and also a new President's Club member. And they want to have a grand opening event where they can invite their guests to come and experience the space as well as highlight the staff that they have. They're asking specifically, how do we navigate something like that without becoming the new med spa that endangered their guests? Or is there an alternative to creating brand awareness without a major event that still will help build clientele, but responsibly? It's a really good question. Thank you for that question, Derek.
That's a great question. And I think it's a real-time challenge. A new business that's coming online that wants to build its base and establish its brand and connect with its customers and future customers is going to have to, number one, comply with the directives that I started out explaining. And certainly you don't want to do anything that's in violation of that, because that would then injure your brand and it would injure your launch. And so I think you have to rely on the tools that we've all become comfortable using since March, which is Zooms and WebEx and Blue Jeans and other virtual communication platforms that allow you to connect. You'll also have to go back to some of the basics and work on your database if you have one, and connect with them through more traditional means and encouraging them to participate with you on a virtual platform. And promise that as we move through this into post-pandemic communications, that you will have the celebration, you will have the party, you will have the get-together that will keep your commitment to them alive. But in the meantime, you don't want to step across those very important safety directives, and you want to work within what's reasonable for people to get a sense of what kind of brand and what kind of commitment you're trying to convey. And it starts with, how serious are you about adhering to COVID restrictions?
Absolutely, because that perception is reality, and I would give you a personal thought, and then also professional as well, and they do meet. The first thing, and this comes from me, being in did news and being on television for many years. People don't listen that closely at the end of the day, right? And so you have to have a simple, clear message. If you're doing a grand opening, the first thing that people would think is, oh my gosh, you're asking me to come someplace. I don't feel comfortable with that. Are they in compliance and whatnot? The way I look at that is there are other ways to do that. Greg, you mentioned that, and virtual ways. Don't be afraid, of virtual experiences. I mean, it's nothing new. People live in a virtual world if you're a gamer, right? And they bring those, so start thinking that way. Take people through the experience. Don't apologize because of the pandemic. And also look for some fun ways to engage people while you have a virtual tour. There's lots of different, I don't want to promote a particular, virtual site, but there's ways you can poll people, you can play games. Just be creative at the end of the day and engage people, and still let them know you're there. Go ahead.
I agree with that, Deb. I just, sorry to interrupt there. It made me think of, I think the successful business formula in COVID for business owners and service delivery people is this formula. It's very simple. Transparency equals trust. If you talk about it, you're open about it. If you have to do it differently than you had wanted to do it, or because you've made changes associated with the state's directives, talk about it. Be candid about it. You're going to win points by doing it that way.
Those are great points. Again, thank you, Derek, for the question. I just want to just make a add on to what you were saying, both of you, about the virtual experiences. You know, when the chamber, we do 100+ in-person events per year. A lot of what we do is networking and networking based. And because of that, when the pandemic hit, we also were afraid, oh no, how do we still deliver on that value prop? In the last 5 months that we've been doing virtual events, we've actually exceeded all of last year's in-person events with the engagement that we've had. So don't be afraid of it. People are you'll be impressed with how many people show up. And I can tell you, you can ask any one of us at the chamber in terms of which platforms in our experience, and we'll be glad to share what our experience has been. So Derek, thank you again for that question. Dovetailing into that, or adding on to that, I wanted to ask you, in the event that a member finds that their business is in violation of OSHA guidelines, how do you advise them? What should they be doing?
Make sure to ask what it is what was the violation? What are the corrective measures that can be instantly implemented? Is it a minor infraction, a major infraction? I think in a lot of cases, state, local officials are going to help teach you up, if you will, to come into compliance and make the changes that are necessary so that you're not in violation. So I think you should look at it in many cases that they're not there to punish unless they're there on repeat occasions. But if you fall out of compliance and you are in violation, ask what you need to do to get it repaired, get it fixed, get it remedied, and then stay in contact with them to make sure you're doing everything else you're supposed to be doing.
That's great. Deborah, do you have anything to add?
Not on that particular. Yeah, I was looking at the time and thinking a little bit about, but I'll take your lead. Well, you know, about, yes, you know, we have the COVID pandemic, but there are several other things happening at the same time that's affecting your customers, and that we should be thinking about that as well.
I wanted to expand on what you said, Greg, in terms of correcting and asking questions of what the guidelines, what the violation was. How would you communicate it to your customers that you've taken every step necessary? Because I'm sure that it's turned into the new dirty dining type of segments when somebody is in a violation of OSHA.
Well, I think you always want to choose candor over sugarcoating every single time. Trust and transparency are never more important than during a crisis. And I think people are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt if you're honest and direct with them. I think it's when you start to try to shade and step and dip and twirl that you get in trouble. And I just think it's always best to be direct and transparent. And if you did something that you shouldn't have been doing, you've made the corrections, you can continue to say, look, you know, we're learning through this as well. We're making changes. We were unaware of this rule. We made the change, and we hope that you'll continue to visit our place of business or do business with us because we've done what we need to do to make sure that we're keeping our employees and everyone around us safe and protected.
Thank you,
Greg. I agree, and an immediate response as well. Don't sit around and wait, right? Because the bad news travels a lot quicker, you know, than the good news.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for expanding on that. Really appreciate it. You mentioned, both of you mentioned earlier in terms of start with your employees. Your employees are really the key to the engagement and making sure that all of the customers in your business are being taken care of. So what would you say to businesses about how they should be communicating safety to their employees? How do they start that conversation?
Go ahead.
Safely, you know, if you're place-based and you have to be in there, of course, you know, mind what the distancing, you know, is. And if not, you know, again, there's nothing like a phone call, consistent emails, and also using Zoom, not just for a conference or problem solving, but just putting a face, you know, to, because people are all over the place, you know, they're working from home, they're in different locations. And personally, I just think, you know, and feel as a communications expert that people respond better when they can look each other in the eye. And now these days it's virtual as well, you know, so communicate with your employees more frequently, I would say. And even if you think it's a little thing, communicate that and make sure that people know what it is and have an, you know, an opportunity to ask questions and also provide input as well.
I would just add that you want to strengthen the commitment to one another, and that you want to hear from them and help assure them that you're doing everything that you can within your power to make sure that you have a safe and sanitary workplace. Mm-hmm. And listen to them on a daily basis or hourly, if the case may be, but engage, connect, and protect.
Thank you. So when we talk about safety for employees, you know, many of us are still working remotely. That's something that I think most businesses will have some type of hybrid model of in-person versus hybrid. For those that are planning to go back to the office, and maybe for those that are in the office now, how do they promote a positive office work environment without becoming kind of, and to use your term, Deborah, from an earlier conversation, a COVID cop? You know, how do we make sure that employees don't turn on each other?
Again, I would think, actually, I would start with, I think the way to do that is, you know, consistently communicating and then rewarding employees for doing the right thing. Don't wait for an employee of the week or employee of the month. Whenever the right thing is happening, reward people for that. Usually it's just a verbal, you know, and really talk with the employees and ask their opinions, you know, but when something is right, or they bring an issue or an opportunity to you, to make sure that you acknowledge that and make sure others know about it. I think, you know, that's how you build positivity versus pointing at somebody saying, hey, they didn't have their glove on when they hit the cash register. Then you're a COVID cop, people shut down, they don't trust each other, they don't talk to each other.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's something to be mindful of too for everyone that is returning back to the office. You know, make sure, as Deborah was saying, include them on the communication plan for safety if you haven't already. You know, think of all the scenarios. Like in our case, we have to take an elevator to get to the office floor separated from our first floor conference area. And we had to think about ways of being in an elevator together. So as you can imagine, I mean, the obvious is there, you know, shared coffee, all that stuff, but there are things that you'll encounter that your employees will know and be able to fill you in on them. So that's a really good point. Thank you so much. We do have some questions from the audience. So I wanted to ask this question. Jason asked this question. He's a new business owner. I'm not sure how new, but Jason, you're a new business owner. So he's asking specifically, how do I gain traction when exposure and referrals are the lifeblood for success? That's a good question for now and also post-COVID as well.
Well, I'll just try to field that one quickly. Assuming Jason's in business and he has a customer base, it's important to talk to the customers and ask them, assuming that they're satisfied, and if they weren't, they probably wouldn't be there, and asking them to help amplify the commitment to be able to serve, and ask them for leads, and perhaps create an incentive program for existing customers to recruit new customers is always a viable program to think about. Secondly is to communicate through your normal channels, through your website, through any social media activity that you have, that you're looking for customers, and that you're committed to serve, and that you're competitive in every place that you need to be, and just be open about, you know, trying to run a new business in the 6 months of COVID is not easy, but we're doing everything we possibly can to provide our service or our product at a competitive rate with the customer service that you would hope to receive from a group like ours.
One thing that I've noticed as well over the last 6 months is that people are communicating and learning and sharing more through social media. And I'm not talking about Facebook. You know, I'm one of the older ones. I'm talking like Instagram. Blows my mind, you know, and as I open up, you know, things like that, I'm learning about, you know, how to better work out at home in my garage, and it's hot, you know, but also it's also telling me who I'm going to go see when I start looking at perhaps switching gyms or spending less money. So think about those are good ways, you know, offer information and advice which can drive you business.
And just to put a point on that, you know, during COVID, we've all relied more on social media and communicating in different ways. And so I think businesses that are aggressive in that area are going to be rewarded.
Thank you. We have another question coming from Josiah. For a nonprofit, do you have any suggestions on how to get through all the noise surrounding not only COVID, but also the elections? He goes on to say, as more comment, nonprofits have seen a drastic drop in donations, and it is difficult in the best of times to get our message out in front of the community. Thank you, Josiah.
Well, I'll start with that because I spent many years in nonprofit, you know, over at United Way of Southern Nevada and also at St. Rose, you know, at their health foundation. It's all about raising money and providing services, right? How do you get through the noise? Change your message. I mean, I'm just going to say, you don't pivot from what your vision and your mission is, but change the message. Think about at the end of the day, you know, why you're important today, and then communicate in that way individually. And I would say, you know, as much as you can to try to use the social media, you know, versus blasting out emails. And I get emails all the time asking either for political contributions or my not-for-profit isn't doing really well, you know, because people, but the need is much higher. I think we know that. But to change the messaging on how you're approaching folks, what are you talking about at the end of the day, and how do you engage them in a way that makes sense for people who feel that they would like to volunteer or go and do something hands-on, but they're not able to do that. So just, you know, put yourself in their position and find ways for people to engage. Eventually, we will be coming back around as far as nonprofits being able to pay the bills, right? Which is through the, you know, and on top of that, you know, provide the services. But I would say change how you go about interacting with your donors.
Fine tune the message. I mean, the crisis will end. You want to, during this period, establish a vision or a mantra of what you're going to be when we come out of this, and how people are going to be able to engage with your not-for-profit. We do a lot of work for not-for-profits at our company. And what we're always trying to do is help people make sense of where we are. And once you establish who you are and what you are amid the pandemic, then you start to build your vision or your mantra for what happens when you come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good message. I can tell you for us, we're also a nonprofit. We really had to pivot, you know, as we were saying before, it really made us focus on what we were focusing on before and start to change our strategy to what we have. Like I said earlier, we were blown away by the amount of people that were engaging with us through this time. And we internally started discussing, what were we doing before? Why weren't we doing this in the first place? So I agree, fine-tuning the message is huge. And then Josiah, thank you. As a shout out, you work at the American Cancer Society. So that's a nonprofit that he works for. And we've spoken before. Thank you so much for the question. This next question comes from Ken. How should we best handle asking for safety commitments from clients we interact with? He goes on to say, on-location video production work brings us into varying locations. We're trying to avoid it and change the content to more graphics-based, but sometimes you have to record on-camera interviews.
I was just going to say that I think you need to be serious about your focus, and your focus is on your safety and the safety of your friends and patrons and customers and clients. And if that makes others feel a little bit uncomfortable, then I think that's just the way it needs to be. You should be able to demonstrate your commitment to compliance and ask others to do the same in a polite and common sense manner.
That's great. Deborah, would you like to add anything?
I would agree with that. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind is leading by example. You know, you do the right thing, people will start doing, and they are doing that. We are seeing that. We're seeing right now, even here in the state of Nevada, you know, the numbers as far as new infections and then the death rates are decreasing. That's not happening by itself. It's happening because, you know, people are starting to get that what you need to be able to do for us to be able to eventually evolve into the next normal. I'm not going to say the new normal, and it's not going to revert back to the way it was, because it seems to me a lot of these habits, you know, will continue because people now, you're seeing what's floating to the top and what's moving away. And at the end of the day, those that are customer focused and really internally focused on doing what's right and educating and empowering their employees, I firmly believe they're going to be able to either reopen, restructure, and survive.
You know, I think that's going to be a good segue into this as you talk about observing and seeing what rises to the top. This one comes from Rafi. Pivot has been the word of the year. How do businesses who might not have their pivot idea or plan in place get the confidence to go left when they've always gone right?
Wow, you know, yeah. You know, I do, you know, at the end of the day, organizational development and strategic planning work and facilitate these conversations, you know, for a living. So I'm kind of I guess, you know, kind of biased on that. You know, if you're not sure what to do, ask for help, bring someone in, you know, or talk with other companies as well. You know, you don't have to be like this, and talk with other folks and really, you know, look at what you've been doing, what could be better at the end of the day. What are we missing? Why have we been missing it? What's working now? And map it all out. And many times it's not necessarily pivoting to a different kind of business. It's just getting better and more flexible at what it is that you already offer.
I don't think that could be said any better.
Oh.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question's coming in, and again, I'll please ask your questions via the Q&A button on top of your screen. Again, you can access it by hovering over any of our faces and then click on Q&A at the very bottom. This question comes from Malcolm. He says that at US Bank and our business group, our team has encountered this concern at times. What do you recommend for those businesses who haven't been able to reopen and are wondering if they should wait out the state mandate or close up shop and pivot into a different business? So again, that word pivot comes up.
Yeah, I mean, that's squarely in the category of business judgment. The ability to pivot in that case, if you can withstand another couple weeks, months, let's just say you're a tavern owner and you've been closed for a very long time. Do you have the ability, do you have the support network to enter into a new line, or are your options limited and so you're really stuck waiting it out? I like the idea of always applying some entrepreneurial spirit. That's not always realistic, but thinking about what you might be able to do to enhance your business program, doing something different during this interim period of no business is, I think, always good thinking. It's good business thinking. As far as waiting it out, you know, you may have no choice, but I think we're trending in the right direction, and maybe, you know, you're able to reopen that tavern in the next several weeks. I don't know, and that is certainly not any prediction of any kind. But I think it depends on where you are in your business, your ability to flexibly look at other lines that are either aligned with your business or entirely different businesses, and your tolerance for risk.
And when we talk about tolerance for risk, you know, a lot of the risk, I would say, is a psychological thing. It's not just, do I have the cash flow to maintain, but risk in going about where you're focusing your time. I'm thinking about a tavern, not anyone in particular, but, if you're waiting for, business as usual, that's kind of, why don't you think about, I would be thinking about what are other ways to continue to engage with your customers. Are you involved with special events? Are you helping out some other organization? What are you doing? Those things, because out of sight, out of mind. I've always learned that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all the questions we had from the members. We do have just one more question on our side, but again, please submit all of your questions in the Q&A feature. I will say, if I've been searching through the chat or looking through the chat, and there's some very good comments, so thank you for the lively chat. Richard DePasso put a link to how a tour bus company talked about their COVID safety protocols. I had a chance to kind of skim through it and take a look at it. The one point I want to point out from there is that it looks like they're going above and beyond what the guidelines are. And that is something that both Greg and Deborah said are really key. Not only just meet the guidelines, but surpass the guidelines to give people confidence that you're doing everything that you need to do. And then there's also some good comments in terms of of who's watching. The community definitely is watching to see how you respond to everything. So with that, I just want to ask, what are the main, we've been talking about everything during COVID, but Greg, you said that obviously this will pass. So what are the main takeaways businesses should be focusing on post-COVID?
Well, we as business owners always think about ROI first. And I think the ROI during COVID is doing the right thing, adhering to the guidelines, keeping safety a priority will be remembered and it will be rewarded. And you'll be able to quantify that reward in repeat business, in loyal customers, in brand commitment, in whatever field that you're in. But I think doing the right thing now will pay off in ways that we haven't seen before. And I think there's no downside, no business risk whatsoever to doing the right thing.
And I would add, to get away from, if you're thinking that, let's get back to normal. What I mean by that is, think about, if you're still in business in any capacity, what is working? And don't ditch that, and build on that as you move forward. And then also, the other thing that I would say is just be positive. We've talked about that before. And look for different ways to interact with your customers. And also look for creative ways to provide information and be a resource for folks, because they will remember that and come back and utilize your services. And another thing I would say is, please don't resist this whole virtual world. I mean, and particularly in the professional services, it's another thing. I've been paying a lot of attention here, and one particular vendor that I use was saying that they were not able to, or they don't have the system set up to be able to have meetings via Zoom. And I shook my head. I'm going, nope, those days are over. So be proactive. A lot of what is happening now will not go back. And look at what is working and build on that. And that's my final words.
Let me say,
the next normal. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, let me say this, Will. Rely on your gut instinct that people will talk. And even though there's 2.5 million people in Clark County, thereabouts, it's still a small town. And if you're doing the wrong thing, people will remember. And it may get around faster than doing the right thing, but if you're doing the right thing, it too will get around. And people talk. And if you're in business, I think you have to rely somewhat on that to occur, and you want it to. And so Las Vegas is still a small town in a lot of ways, and people that do the right things in the right ways, people notice. People do take notice, and they talk about it. So that's something I think should always be in the back of your mind.
That's a really good point, both of you. Thank you so much. I wanted to just invite any last questions that you may have for the panelists. And in doing so, I also wanted to have Greg and Deborah, any last comments in terms of what we've talked about today? Anything you'd like to add on?
No,
Right.
keep wearing your face mask and keep social distancing because the numbers are coming down. The more that we do to keep those numbers coming down, then we can get some easing on these restrictions and get back to where we're supposed to be and hopefully get some of this behind us.
And my final is, you know, we say it all the time. This is a can-do state. We are resilient. We've been through a lot. Things will probably continue to happen. But at the end of the day, it's about being agile, being positive, and focusing on your employees and your staff. I really believe that those are the keys.
Yeah, I agree with that. Keeping the focus on your customers and employees, communicating with them, and repeat every day.
That is the absolute truth. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Greg, Deborah, thank you so much. I have a question for both of you. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and talk to you more about this subject, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, Deborah, I mean, you can find me, you know, Google, FaceTime, Instagram, Twitter. I'm all over the place. I'm on the chamber directory now. I just rejoined yesterday, so I'm really proud of that. And, you know, if you really just, you know, want to talk about a lot of different things, either, you know, have a meeting facilitated, look for an outside opinion, you know, looking at organizational development, particularly working with your employees, just give me a call, send me a text, and I'll be happy to respond.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, www.theferrarogroup.com. We're available to help businesses no matter what size, no matter how old or young. And, you know, helping business continue to take place, keeps people employed, keeps people served, and it keeps the engine running. So we're happy to help in any way we can. And thanks for the opportunity to make a plug.
Yes, of course. No, thank you to both of you. Thanks to everybody. And I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So as we conclude our webinar today, I'd like to thank Mr. Greg Ferraro and Ms. Deborah Campbell for joining us today. Obviously, our sponsors, SCE Federal Credit Union and UNLV Executive MBA Program, for the generous support to make all of this run online. And thank you to the members for joining this call today. As a reminder, this will be available as soon as it's uploaded onto our YouTube channel at Vegas Chamber. Please be sure to tune in. We're always uploading content on there, and you can see all of the past 40 or so webinars that we've done already. And please reach out to us at the Vegas Chamber, me at WOchoa, OCHOA at vegaschamber.com. If you ever need anything, I saw my LinkedIn blow up, so I have a few messages to answer. And thank you again for being here today. Have a great, wonderful rest of your Thursday and a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us, Will. Thank you. Bye-bye.